So let me share the presentation with you guys. So give me 1 second for that. Okay, that should work now. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about today is hiring digital marketers, and specifically hiring A players in digital marketing. And that's what I do professionally. That's what I've done for my own business that wasn't a recruitment agency. And talking to a number of business owners, there are some things that I've learned by doing this that they didn't even know, and that are super helpful in building their own teams. And maybe a bit of background for myself, and then you'll understand why it's digital marketing that I focus on. So I used to co-own a business called iPhone Photography School. So we helped people take better photos with the iPhone through online courses and educating them that way. And yeah, we built the business on SEO, Facebook ads, direct response marketing, email marketing, so everything around digital marketing. And we scaled it quite far, maybe further than a business like that is supposed to go. So we got it to high 7 figures, so built a reasonably sized team and really took it seriously. And for myself, as one of the owners, of course, I worked on a bit of everything, but there was heavy focus on recruitment at that time. And that's kind of when I first realized, okay, we're maybe doing something that other people are not when it comes to recruitment. And then when I sold my shares in the business, I was kind of realized, okay, I could turn that into my next business. So right now, I usually help online businesses hire A players in 6 weeks or less. And by online business, I mean anything that's built around digital marketing. That's kind of my quick definition. So my previous business was an online business. Many SaaS businesses are online businesses, in my mind, many agencies and things like that. And I usually work with teams that are 10 to 20 people. That's because they've kind of went through the initial growing pains. The business is healthy enough to actually be building a team on top of it. But maybe there are some things where I can be helpful and kind of show them the way and what I've gone through and what I've seen my clients go through. But yeah, and then I do focus on digital marketing, but for these kind of businesses, they're kind of also supporting functions that I help with. It could be account managers and things like that. And my approach is almost exclusively headhunting, and I'll get into why in a second as well. So yeah, and for today, what I had in mind, there are a couple of thoughts I want to share about what you should consider before you're even hiring anyone. But then I'll talk about the 3 major steps of recruitment. So having a great candidate pool, pitching them effectively, and then screening them to really make sure you're getting the right person for your team. So before you start, maybe a bit of a rant, and I'll have a couple of those, but the first question is, do you really need to hire? And that's something I ask my clients, and maybe it's counterintuitive for a recruiter. It's my business to hire people, but as a business owner, and that's how I approach it first, I know that hiring is always a pain. It's always a distraction. As much as you'd read on my website about my offer how smoothly it's going to go, and it would, but it's going to take a lot of time for somebody on your team in the short term. At least it's going to take interviewing some people, looking at them, try to make some hard decisions. So if you can avoid it, if you don't absolutely have to, if you do not have to do it, I suggest that you don't. So first thing is making sure that you really need it. And the other thing is, in the long term, you'll also have to manage that person, or someone on your team will have to manage them. And unless there's a really strong kind of business case or a strong reason for having them on the team, maybe don't, kind of your job as a business owner is to solve problems, not necessarily grow your team. And it might even be easier to solve some problems if you don't have a huge team. The other rant I have is people often say hire for attitudes and train for skills. I think that's not helpful. It's actually harmful. If you can hire for both. So again, you hire employees to solve business problems. So you wouldn't choose a surgeon for attitude. You would choose surgeon for their skills. Obviously, you want them to have a great attitude and be, someone that's great to work with someone that develops and helps everyone else around them be better, but they also need to have the skills. And if you had a choice between someone who has the skills or don't have the skills, you're going to go for the person that has them already. One thing I've seen my peers fall into, myself as well, it feels really good to mentor someone and kind of help them out and help them improve as people. I think we're just wired that way, but it doesn't always grow your business. You can sink a lot of time into someone where it's just not the best thing for you to be doing. The other kind of fallacy I've definitely done it myself, I've seen other people do, is kind of thinking that, well, I figured this out, so someone else who's reasonably smart could also do it. Why not give them a shot? It can work out, but it's just low odds of success. And if you think about it, there probably, and especially in my case, there are a few things that I figured out really well and maybe better than other people, but there are a number of things that I didn't figure out that never kind of got them, and that just wasn't my thing. And everyone has this. They have a few of these special abilities, things they can do really well. And before they've proven themselves, it's really hard to look into the future and see, okay, this is going to be your special ability. I just, it's as I'm saying, it's low odds of actually being successful. And even if it works out, it takes a long time. So for someone to go through all the growing pains. So once again, if you can find someone who already has done it successfully a number of times, why not go for that person? So yeah, at the same time, and again, you'll see why a little later on in the presentation, but it does have to be a challenge for the person that's joining your team. It would be great to hire someone who's done it 100 times, done it really successfully, but they won't always be interested in going through the same challenge. So it's kind of a balance between someone who's capable, who's done similar things, but you still have to make sure that it's interesting for them. And this is what I was talking about, that your offer, you're basically, in hiring, you also have an offer but this time as an employer, not as a business. But similarly, how you would have an offer for your customers, you have it for your potential employees. And what I did around the new year, I just looked at all the hires I made last year. There was 43 of them, and I went through all the kind of interviews I've had with those people where I asked their reasoning for joining. And I only looked at the people we actually hired. So people that I thought are worth hiring, that my clients thought are worth hiring. And for those people, 61% said that they want a new challenge. That's a reason why they're looking for something. And it actually, I don't have hard data there, but it matches really well with when I reach out to someone and they decline. Usually it's because they don't have a challenge, or it's they don't see it as a challenge, or it's a lateral move. So this is something that's really important to kind of approach to people that would see it as a challenge, but still have this kind of ability to take it on. The other one, which I also kind of ties into what I just said, is about half of the people said that they like the opportunity because it's a good match with their skills. So they see, okay, what I have now, I can use it, and I can use for a nice business to help them out in a way, and kind of, they want to challenge themselves, but they want to build on what they've done already. And also kind of related to this, a little analysis I did was that most candidates will want a salary increase, and in the end, about 75% of them actually got an increase. So you can expect that if you do things how I suggest, at least, then most people will get an increase from what they're getting now. But to me, it makes sense approaching someone who's really good, who has all the skills, and maybe giving them a little more than what they're earning now, but you get so much more as a business owner. And just for kind of so you know what to expect, the median increase was about 15%, and it barely exceeded like 1/3 of an increase. So generally they were quite reasonable, but there was a small increase if they were to join us. So then another thing to think about before you hire is defining the role. So what would the person actually do? And one is a scope, and that's really important in digital marketing, because you can be really broad. So you can try and hire a growth marketer, so someone who does a bit of everything and just kind of generally tasked with growing the business, or you can be really narrow on a specialist level. So the example I have here is an outreach specialist in a link building team in an SEO department that's then a part of a digital marketing team. So it can be quite broad, can be quite narrow. It's both come with their own kind of things to keep in mind and things to consider. But that's basically one axis or one variable that you need to understand before you're hiring. And then related to that is what experience you want them to have, and it's also based on the outcomes you want. If it's a very specific part of your company, it will be a different experience than if it's quite broad. And the different things you might want to look at is kind of the subcategory of the role, as I call it. So in online advertising, it could be based on platforms. So Google is very different from Facebook and social advertising. I would say actually Facebook and TikTok are quite similar, but they're totally different from Google and totally different from Amazon. Also the industry that they worked in. So let's take online advertising again. Pay-per-click for SaaS would be quite different from pay-per-click for direct to consumer. Size of the company. So many times, especially if they're managers, but in many different cases, one is kind of what context they're used to. So I assume people watching right now usually have smaller companies that I work with as well. And generally, it's quite difficult to make this transition from being used to having all the resources and having a rather narrow role to thinking more broadly and maybe sometimes more creatively in a smaller company. So that's also something to take into account. At the same time, if you're looking for a manager, there are some larger companies I work with as well. They want someone who's gone through the same stages of growing a company and who's seen it before. So it could go either way. Then it's generally what I see is people who've worked for an in-house teams and people who work for agencies. They can make a switch sometimes, but overall, it's a different skill set. So it's kind of a very different focus for what you're doing in one or the other. And generally, you'd like to keep things the same way. And it can be, I've seen so mostly hiring for in-house teams. I've seen that, okay, agency people, they haven't worked on a single client, which deters them. Or if I'm hiring for myself or some of my agency clients, in-house people just don't get what the clients need, how to manage them and kind of how to work with them. So those are two quite different things. And then you have to consider relevance, and it's hard to kind of notice that at first. But one example I have, the first time I was hiring an editor, I was approaching a number of them. I didn't realize why is nobody working out. They have really nice job history, really nice on the interview, but when I give them an assignment, it just doesn't work out, and it's because they've done entirely different editing than what we asked them to do in this case in an SEO context. So these little things you probably notice once you fail a few times and then start wondering why that was. So then about where to talk about candidate pool and maybe the first step of a great recruitment process. I was just explaining to a friend today, actually, if you approach a great pool of people, your pitch can be worse than in other situations. Your screening process can be worse, because if you're starting with these people who are really good fits and should work out, it makes everything much easier. For me, kind of about three quarters of the time I hire in Eastern Europe. And it's absolutely amazing in my mind if you can make the time zones work with your company. People have great English, great work ethic. They generally have international experience, especially in smaller countries where their markets are smaller. So then they're used to working for the global market. At the same time, often the local job market is quite weak, meaning that if you have a good challenge, a slightly better financial offer than maybe what they're used to in their local market, then you can get the very best people. And that's to me the main difference, where You know, if I was to hire in the States for the same amount of money, or actually even lower amount, I would get, you know, maybe someone who's average. And if I went to Eastern Europe, for less money, I could get someone who's the very best in the country, because they just don't get many opportunities like that. And so as an example, again, looking at the number of people I hired, 29% of them came from Serbia, just one small country that perfectly encapsulates kind of the general trend in Eastern Europe. If you definitely want to work in North America, definitely consider Canada over the States. Again, the salary level is cheaper, not as many opportunities. Same kind of story, not as big of a discount as maybe if you compare it to Eastern Europe, but still generally better value than in the States. I've also hired expats in Latin America. It's hard for me to find them, but that can work quite well. But overall in Latin America, I've at least seen a weaker candidate pool compared to, for example, Eastern Europe. Then the other thing is how to actually find people. That's where it gets to my approach. So the first thing I do as a business owner, again, maybe counterintuitive for a recruiter to be saying it, but if you can, try referrals. That's the first place I go. You can get really great candidates. Generally, they also ask for lower salaries, and I think it's because when they kind of they would agree for a job when they're looking, and when they're looking, they generally want lower salaries. They're already pre-sold in the company, so they know, okay, their friend says, okay, it's really cool working there. But obviously the cons are that there's a limited number of people. So when I was building my own team, I was going through my Facebook Messenger time and time again, and at a certain point, it just got the results just weren't there. And of course, you still have to screen those people. Just because someone on your team said, okay, this guy or girl, they're really good, it doesn't mean that they actually are. They look at their friend first, and they want to do them a favor, and they put company second. So you still have to screen them carefully. But so then once you've kind of run out of options there, the best thing by far in my mind for finding full-time people is reaching out to them directly on LinkedIn. I was kind of not forced, but I was in a situation where I used to only run job ads, and I was in a situation where nothing was coming in, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And a week in, I was absolutely hooked, because the quality of people is just so much higher. You can pre-screen everyone that would apply. You just don't write to those people, and you reach out to the very best fits. And people are very responsive. You see later on, 90% of people that I reach out to, they actually see the message. Not everyone responds, of course, but it's really, really easy to reach people that way. If you're hiring part-time, UpWork is a great place, and I'll show you exactly how I find people there. And then for job ads, yes, you can use them, but I would say only do that if you're looking for a very broad skill set. So someone who's basically in an entry position. So let's say a salesperson that you want to train up that has no experience or little experience, doesn't really make sense to reach out to them on LinkedIn, because it's hard to go by their career history and say, yes, this person will be a good fit or won't be. You'd rather have much more people apply and kind of filter them to the people who are really excited about the opportunity, who seem to have all the prerequisites, but maybe things you wouldn't see from their career history. Or if you can wait or save money, it just generally takes longer to use job ads, and you can pay less in salaries, because those are the people that are looking. Then usually they'll still want an increase, but probably lower than in the cases where you approach them proactively. And of course, if you have a great brand, if you're one of the top companies in your location, for example, people know you already, or friends of theirs work in the company, then of course job ads can be really helpful. Then about pitching people. So this is something my LinkedIn rep sent me, kind of the stats you can expect for when you're reaching out on LinkedIn. And you can see that 90% of people actually open the message, which is a great way to reach people. Basically, everyone or 90% of the people that you reach out to actually see your message, which is amazing to me. And then a response rate, in my case, it's just above 40%. This green line is for other companies in the industry, the average. So I guess somewhere I'm doing a better job or reaching out to more relevant people. But for them, it's around 30%. So 30-40% is what you can expect in terms of people actually responding. And then accepting is kind of the same thing. The 6% just say no thanks. So I guess maybe somewhere in this 25 to 35% of people you can expect to actually be interested in and wanting requesting more information. And here's exactly the type of outreach message I send. So the text is a little small, but I'll kind of walk you through the main idea if you look on the right. So of course, greet the person, and then you say, I'm hiring this kind of role for this kind of company. So in this case, an SEO lead for an established flower delivery company from New York. And I always give the company name. I think if you approach it with kind of with openness and honesty, you can expect the same later on in the process. And I think that's just a better way to do things. But people sometimes choose not to mention the company name, which is fine too, I guess. Then I don't say it explicitly here, but almost every other outreach message I have has the phrase, your experience could be just what we're looking for. And I send this to about 50 people at a time. So it's a little trick, but I've made sure when I'm selecting them that it is true what I'm saying, that their experience could be exactly what we're looking for. In this case, I said, if here's like an SEO team that an agency used to lead, now we want to take it in-house, we'd like you to lead it. So very, very similar idea. And then I give the details about the position that show that this phrase I just said is true. So in this case, one of the key phrases here is that we have same-day delivery in 7 US cities, and you'll work on these markets the most. And the title says about your experience with local SEO. So these are people that have worked with local SEO, so a sub-niche of SEO, and the details of the description see that, okay, this is actually relevant to your skills. They've likely worked with similar kind of e-com service businesses that are more local if they're receiving this message. And then I just give some information about the position. 10 to 20K budget is quite good for an SEO person, especially if they work from Eastern Europe. That I reaffirm that there'll be an SEO lead, that they're the ones who are the experts of the domain. It's not like they're working for someone else or for a boss, because that's, I've found out, is a big thing that SEO specifically care about. Also, them having a budget shows that they're not just one of the marketing functions, they're one of the main marketing functions, or if they have any needs, they can go out and get them, which is not always the case. Typically, you're just competing for resources for other channels that generate results faster. So that's an SEO specific thing where you can say, okay, you'll actually have a budget that's very appealing to this kind of person. I make sure that they know that the role is fully remote, and kind of they have a sense for what the team size is, in this case, around 15 people. And I always give the salary information, because again, I like this aura of openness, and people, they just don't want to waste time. So, and if they don't see the salary number, they might just decide, okay, well, they didn't say because it was low, and you go ahead and say it. So, they know, okay, this is for me, or maybe it's not for me, but maybe I can recommend someone else. And the one thing that's interesting about salaries, sometimes I don't know what to offer. And then I kind of go with my gut and I see, okay, some people are way too excited for this offer. So maybe we're offering a little too much, or sometimes we don't get enough responses. Sometimes people just tell us. So that's kind of an easy way. And if you give a range, you see this range is pretty big, 3,000 to 5,500. Typically, you can also just in the end agree on something that's fair for you, for what's in the market, and for the person that's joining your team. So I don't think often the objection to posting salary information is that, oh, you're going to end up paying more. Maybe partially true, but I think usually you come to something fair And as again, if you're scooping the very best people, which is the idea of this entire process, it makes sense to, in theory, overpay, but you're also getting back so much more. And then, yeah, I just asked them if I can send them more information. That's a really easy thing to say yes to. And usually people just go ahead and do that, and then they get started with the process, and then it's maybe harder to stop. You can see how this conversation went. So this person is, yes, it's interesting. Please send more details. Send a job description, which we'll look at in a moment. I send a domain name. I give them my Calendly link. If they said it's interesting, if they haven't indicated, they just said, yes, please send more. I just said, how does it sound? And give them my Calendly on the next message. Yeah, and then you just schedule a message and kind of take it from there. So then I wanted to talk about the job description. So it's, to me, it's also part of the pitch. And whatever we wrote here on the initial message, it's basically a compressed version of the job description. And kind of the one, and here on the left, you can see a feedback from some of my clients that they're in digital marketing and they're copywriting, and they quite appreciate the style that I have and that I recommend everyone takes. It's basically centered around the person. So yes, there is some information you want to convey about yourself, but generally you show that, okay, this is this is more about them than anything else. So to give you an example of the same opportunity, we were talking about this local SEO one. So basically it just has a title that gets them to pay attention. Are you great at SEO? Yes. Are you ready to run your own show? That's I identified as the main motivation for people to join. Here's a little, I always start with something that is about them. So you excel at SEO, you put in the hours, days, and years, solving various SEO challenges, and you're ready to take the next step and work for an established e-commerce website and kind of run your own show, basically. Then, and this is quite formulaic. I suggest you repeat it. There's no reason not to. Explain what's going on in the company, our backstory, why us, why not someone else. Kind of, one is in this case, the quality of the flowers. The other one is the attention or amount of attention they pay for UX and digital marketing. And then, yeah, we'll give some numbers that are about the role. Sometimes it's a special section of the job description. Sometimes it just kind of naturally leads into this about us section, but I give them, revenue numbers, traffic numbers, whatever they'd be interested in. And then a few reasons that, again, are about them, why they'd want to join this team and not something else. And generally, they come from talking to a number of people for similar positions. These are the things they've given back to me that, okay, this is what I want from an SEO role. So then the next time, or if I adjust the copy later on, I include them if they're true, of course, about the opportunity. Then just what we expect from them. And once again, explain really clearly if there are some schedule expectations, what are the salary expectations. If we offer contractor agreements, so we put that very clearly. It's full-time, fully remote, and what to do if they're interested. And the idea of this job description is quite long, but my goal as a recruiter is, if at the end of the screening call they have no questions or just one or two kind of clarifying questions, is this really the case type of things, then I've done my job. The job description is well written. Sometimes, especially in searches where there are several rounds, there's a type of question that comes up over and over again. I realized, okay, I need to put this in the job description for the next round of outreach, and generally the question just disappears. So it's a good gauge of what people are interested in. It also saves you time, and it even saves you energy, because instead of explaining it, you probably would talk to 10, 15 people on these screening interviews. You just go ahead and explain it once, and then people have a clear idea of what they're signing up for. And also, you don't have to repeat yourself for someone who might not even be relevant, Good. And then maybe a little detailed list, but it's especially if you're looking at it later on, every candidate will want to know why we're hiring, what's the biggest challenge, what's my day-to-day growth opportunities, company story, and so on, so on, so on. This is pretty much a full list that I go over and check every time that, okay, I've actually mentioned this, because if I don't, I'm gonna have to say it over and over again when I'm interviewing people. Then also about how to pitch on Upwork and how that works. So that's when you're hiring part-time people, and that's a really good idea if basically you don't need someone full-time. If you can get away with someone working part-time, why not ask them to join part-time? So, and the couple of keys here is one, offer long-term work. So that's what these freelancers generally they're missing. So they've given up this one employer situation, but they're still interested in some sort of stability. So if you can tell them, we'll give you 15 to 20 hours per week, that's the best of both worlds. You have some stability, but you also don't feel like you're working with one person, and especially people who are more technical. So here it was a marketing automation position for HubSpot. Even sometimes developers, especially marketing developers, copywriters, video editors, these sort of positions where it's more technical, maybe more repetitive. People want some variety. And then if you can say, okay, you're not going to work only for me, but it's going to be some stability. And of course, for you as a business owner, it's nice to have some stability that you don't have to onboard a person every single time you need something done. So that's good. If you can offer long-term work, then be selective with who you invite to your Upwork position. So someone, in these cases, I generally go for someone who's earned at least 1K, who at least have 95% of job success. And that sounds very high, but the Upwork review system is broken. There's no incentive to be truthful. So if someone's lower than 95%, it's usually a bad sign. That they mark their English as at least fluent, and that they've basically done this before by checking their profile. You can be less selective if you're offering it as a kind of long-term role, because then it's actually maybe even better if they're not as established. You have to screen them more carefully, but they'll be more willing to accept this long-term engagement because they're just not as established on the platform. Then what I offer to for Upwork is text-based interviews. And I have a whole kind of script for them. So if anyone, I guess I'll send it to you guys, and you can distribute it later. But basically, there's going to be a number of people that want to talk to you. Generally, the quality of candidate is lower, so you don't want to get on a call with every single one. But what you can do is tell them, okay, please ping me on Skype at this time on this day, and you just do text-based interview. So you can talk to 10 people at a time. Maybe, 2 of them, if you have 10 candidates, 2 of them won't show up. Another 2 or 3 will have poor English. Another 2 or 3 won't actually have the skills that you're looking for. And then these 2, you can try a low commitment test assignment. You still pay them, but maybe for an hour or 2 hours of work. See if you like the turnout, and then build it from there to this 15 or 20 hours or whatever you need for your business. So that's worked for me quite nicely when finding part-time people, and especially on Upwork. Then the final step for screening, you're as a business owner, sometimes you'll do it for yourself, especially when you're starting out, but not always. So the things you should know. So there are the following steps. So screening call, again, I have a script, happy to share that. And it's quite formulaic. I have the same introduction, and I say it about 9 times a day. My wife can repeat it off memory, but it's effective. That's how you start those calls, and you can be more creative if you want to, but you don't need to. Generally, screening calls can be done by your team members. I still do it myself because I still learn about the position, but especially if you're managing the process, generally you can let other people do it. I would say that's the easiest step out of all of them, especially if you have a good script, which I'm happy to share. Then another really important step is a test assignment. And that if you take away one thing from this entire speech, please just never ever skip this step, because there can be people with great resumes, great interviewing skills. You think, okay, we're perfectly aligned on everything. But then once they actually submit some sort of task and kind of what they consider as quality output, that's kind of the moment of truth, right? That's when you can tell, okay, this person has the same standard as me or not. And more often than not, unfortunately, they don't. So yeah, I would never ever skip this step. Then there's an interview with the hiring manager, which is usually the business owner for smaller companies, or maybe someone in your company for if you have a larger team. And there, that one you kind of just probe deeper about their knowledge of the role, how they approach things, and generally that conversation flows quite easily, and it's easy to structure. Then the final step that sometimes can be waived if everything's gone perfectly up until then, but for myself, I still do it every single time, is called top grading, or a long interview. And sometimes it takes even up to 3 hours. I've done even longer, but we go through every single job they've had in the past and ask the same questions. So how did you get this job, what you have to do, high points, low points, what you enjoy the most, the least, how was your boss, how would your boss rate you, and why did you leave? And that's basically the full list. But every job you talk about it for maybe 30 minutes, 30 minutes, and you go through their entire job history. And what happens is, one, you learn from what happened in the past, and two, it's impossible to pretend for 3 hours at a time. So you really get to know the real person, what you can expect, and sometimes really unexpected things come out of it. So if there's any sort of question in at least my hiring process, I insist that we do it. But if everything's gone perfectly and you kind of don't want to kill the momentum of the hiring process, then sometimes it can be waived. In the past, I've done reference checks, but almost always they're waived unless there's something specific we want to know. In my experience, they just haven't been worth the effort. It's hard to set them up. It takes a long time, and you rather just get started with the right person. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. So for getting in touch with me, yeah, if you want to work together now, or even if you have a question, just go to RecruiterMill.com, message me, we can set up a call. If you want to stay in touch, also go to RecruiterMill.com and subscribe. So a lot of these things I shared today, I share them periodically on my email list. So if you want to keep up to date and maybe get some of these nuggets that is not common knowledge in my mind at least, then definitely subscribe and I'll be happy to share them. So yeah, that's all on my end, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dude, that was great. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. That was I mean, you probably know this already, but in the community, hiring is an ongoing problem for a lot of companies, and it's a difficult problem to solve. And I think what I really liked about this presentation is you kind of stepped through step by step what you're doing and why you're doing it, how to get better than average results from it. And I think that's going to give a lot of our members kind of a framework to follow, which is perfect.
For sure.
Did have a couple of questions for you. So let me just have a look through. Okay, so
Ryan, do you mind if do you have questions?
Sorry?
I wanted to jump in with a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were going through, I love that list, a really, really great presentation. And as Ryan said, we had a lot of community members asking, like, how do I go about hiring? And I love the first slide you said, we were like, is it necessary to hire? And we actually had like a bunch of conversations about that. And I wanted to ask, like, what are some, like, you've done a lot of interviews and so on, what are some of the obvious red flags for a candidate? Like, let's say you're starting the interview, what are some of the red flags that you've got?
I think in very broadly, if you ever get like a bad gut feeling about someone, you might as well end the interview then and there, because there's just something that's going to come up and it's not going to work out. So I like to be on time. So if a person's not on time, I'm like, and of course they could be late, but if they should apologize then. But anything that feels off, you should trust your gut feeling. Generally by now, like, I only approach a person if they've been in the same job for the last job at least a year. On average, at the very least 1.5 years is what they spend at one company, ideally more. So they generally have stable track records. I've checked out the companies that they work for. By now, again, it comes back to the candidate pool. If you approach the right candidate pool, then the outcomes are going to be much better. Obviously, if you approach people in foreign markets, sometimes English is just an issue, and that's a little harder to tell from just their LinkedIn profile. But that could be a thing. And sometimes I just say, honestly, okay, sorry, it's not going to work at least in this opportunity because of your English level. But otherwise, I liked everything I heard. So those are some of the things that you would pay attention to. But in general, so here's how I'd put it. You can trust your gut feeling if it's negative. If it's positive, still verify and look for those things that could be an issue, and involve a second person if you can, just to make sure. It's really easy to get excited about person, and when really you maybe shouldn't be for objective reasons. So don't necessarily believe your gut reason in that sense. Go through all the steps. But yeah, be very, very careful if something feels off.
Thanks.
So
and
jump in, Sonny.
just want to follow up on that, because you mentioned you had a lot of success with LinkedIn. Are there any things, because I know a lot of our founders have also said, they go to LinkedIn and they found LinkedIn really works, but are there certain things on a LinkedIn profile that like you found consistently, if someone has like red flags or?
So the main thing there would definitely be kind of the job history. If they're basically jumping around companies, it's just, I don't know, maybe it would work for some people, and maybe if you need someone to come in for a few months, well, sure, why not? But generally the kind of teams I work with, they build for the long term, so you don't want to risk it. Generally, they're going to repeat this behavior that they've done before, either positively or negatively. So that's number one thing that I look for. And then it's easier to tell if they have more information on their profile. So it's good to read it. Again, I generally approach 50 people every week for one position, and that gives me enough kind of information if we're on the right path or not, and kind of get the market feedback, and then we can double down or adjust. And if those 50 people are qualified, then you're more likely to kind of draw the right conclusions. If you're just approaching people that you shouldn't be approaching, then it's going to be much harder. Hard to say that there one or two of those things kind of over. I know that even if I compare myself to a year ago, I have a much better feel for what's likely to work. I'm also working to codify it a little bit so I can pass it on. But for now, it's more you look at the person and look for things why they maybe wouldn't work out. And if you feel they really shouldn't, don't add them to the list just because you think, okay, well, maybe. So sure, you can give people a shot, but if there's something that tells you, okay, we shouldn't do it, then don't. And one other thing is if there's someone in sunglasses in their profile photo, that's never ever worked, and those interviews usually are terrible. So I don't even bother anymore.
That's my favorite one. Sunglasses. No.
Studies. I had a couple of questions I wanted to run through as well. So you mentioned giving them a test assignment or a small task to figure out. So can you kind of unpack that a little bit more? Like how much time should they spend on it? Do you pay them for it or not? What does that kind of look like? Yeah, so the kind of thinking there goes that if you hire someone that can do the job already, the odds of them working out are just that much higher, and that's the whole reason. And the other thing was what I mentioned, that you want to see their work output and what they consider quality output. I've had candidates tell me, well, I didn't know you're going to be so harsh, so I would have tried more. I'm like, well, you're interviewing for a job, you're not trying now. What are the odds you're going to be trying later? So that's the reason why I do it, and it depends on a type of role. So again, lots of SEO clients recently. So there it's quite simple. You give them your website, you ask them to make an audit and kind of a plan for what they'd be doing, how they achieve their goals.
and that on average takes about 5 hours. What I offer them is their hourly fee. So if you take their annual salary divided by roughly 2,000, offer that. Usually people, they're still not used to that, and they'd be quite appreciative that, okay, you're giving them some money, but I don't offer more. It's not like a consulting gig. It's something they need and we need, and offering them an hourly fee, I think, is a fair solution. And then that can be paid through PayPal, bank account, even an online shop, gift card, with whatever is easiest for them. And people are quite appreciative. And it's one of those things that you're starting a relationship, you don't really, and they don't really know what to expect from you as an employer. So if you're very proactive about the payment and tell them, yes, we're going to provide it, we respect your time, it's another kind of credibility point in your favor. If you don't offer it, then you'll leave some room for interpretation, and usually, at least a lot of people go to the negative. So it's better to kind of offer a little bit, and it's not going to take that lot. It's usually going to be somewhere in the area of 50 to $100. And if you're going to probably ask maybe 5 people to complete the test assignment. So it's compared to all the other costs in the hiring process, it's really not that much. And I think it's been so worth it in my experience. But in terms of what to ask them, it really depends. So for an editor, you ask them to edit even a brief part of an article, not a whole article. So that can take maybe 90 minutes for them. If there's a PPC specialist, what I'd actually do with them is ask them to show what they've done in the past. So more of a show and tell on the second interview, and then maybe give them analyst access to my ad account and kind of go through it and make some suggestions there. And that's usually 1, maybe 2 people at most would do such a thing. So those are the kind of things that you expect. So something that they'd actually be doing on the job is what you ask them to do.
So I think with a lot of that stuff, people are reluctant to give them access to certain tools or information or anything that's proprietary before they're an employee. And like, where do you stand on that? Would you encourage them to sign an NDA before doing that? Would you avoid anything that involves that?
It depends, especially if you have partners. That can be tricky. For my own business, I don't think it's that easy to copy. So I'm not very stressed. And you can invest some time into maybe modeling the data. That's something I've done before, so that they're not able, to get your entire client list, which is probably something you don't want to show. So I would find a way, basically. And we've also created kind of fake accounts, basically where they go in and all they see is their actual canvas. So let's say for an email automation position. So all these things are possible. You just need to think about, okay, what is it that I don't want to share and how to go around it.
And if they were applying for an editor position, would you deliberately send them an article like where you've knowingly added some mistakes or some corrections that need
not
to be
necessarily? So actually, I would actually go out of my way to send as average of an article as possible, because that's what they'll be working on. They're not going to work on terrible writers. Hopefully, they're not on your team. And if everything's done for them, then it's also no use. So I wouldn't necessarily make it harder than it needs to be, and it doesn't need to be kind of this end all be all kind of super hard thing that they need to accomplish. If you really want to, if it's a really challenging role, yes, maybe. But in general, it's something, a daily task almost, or a weekly task you can expect them to do, just so you see what they're about and what they can do currently.
And would you give a different task if it was a management role? So in that example you gave before of an SEO manager, it's one thing to test their SEO knowledge with an audit, but it's another thing to see how would you manage a team. Those
are generally trickier, and there it is more about getting access, or sometimes even interviewing people and doing even longer projects. But those are also typically more senior positions where you also want to be more careful about who you bring on the team. So it won't be as smooth as, you know, a 90-minute task, which is quite repetitive or repeatable. Let's put it that way. So yeah, you're gonna have to be a little more creative with those management roles.
Okay. Second question is kind of related to that. In terms of hiring people for a skill set that you don't personally have yourself. So an example of this, I'm not a developer. Hiring technical people can be quite difficult for me. I know a lot of the people in the community are really strong on the technology side of things. Hiring a marketer is really difficult, and it's really difficult for them to tell the difference between, is this person legit or are they just talking out of their hat? Because, you know, so what advice would you give someone who's hiring for a skill set that they can't accurately assess themselves?
Yeah, so that's why one other reason why I stick to digital marketing. It's just an area I know it's hard. You know, if something sounds too good to be true to my ear, it usually is. So it's that makes the entire thing easier for me. But let's say I'm also not. I've been around developers, but you know they could trick me, and they have in the past. I'm right now helping with a head of engineering role, which is not a typical role for me, but the company fit is really nice. And I asked my old CTO if you could spare an hour and talk to this person, just verify that what we think he's capable of, he really is. And I know for him, it's really easy. He just gets on a call, he talks to the person, he's an expert, he can ask a few questions and kind of say, okay, this guy's legit or not. So yeah, basically my advice then would be find a person that is knowledgeable in the area and kind of verify with them that, you know, that person knows what they're talking about.
Fantastic. Let me just check if there's any more questions, but that's most of them. Okay.
I wanted to ask just because we have recently in the conversation, so I run the mastermind calls and so on, and recently we've had about 3 founders, and they you know, they bootstrapped and they started out, and 2 of them actually are about to like make their first hire, and they're a little bit hesitant inside. So what are some of the tips you would give to, say, a founder who's doing their first hire?
Yeah, it's going to be really hard. You're going to mess up, and that's fine, and it's part of the experience. And that's why for me, as you know, a professional recruiter, I generally work with these bigger teams where, as I mentioned, they going through some of the growing pains. It's going to be hard, even for myself. It's still hard, and I'm supposed to be good at this, but that's because of the size of my company that I'm currently at. Yeah, I mean, just be vigilant, try to be really careful. You're still gonna not realize some of the things that you're really needing. So it's okay, but you know, try your best. The other thing is definitely consider working with people on a kind of freelance basis. Yes, all the business owners I talk to, they want to work with people who are dedicated, but these days, people who work 15, 20 hours a week, they can also be dedicated. So see if that's something you can work with. And there are a number of things. One is kind of, you know, we're all human beings and we don't want to, you know, mess up a good thing for someone else. So if you're asking someone else to switch a job, I feel a big responsibility there. So I would, before I'm really sure it's going to be a great idea, I try working with them on a freelance mode. So that's one thing, and that's going to be very telling, and maybe it can grow into a full-time job later on. The other thing is it's just easier financially for you. So sometimes you just don't need a dedicated person. It's totally fine if they work 15, 20 hours a week. And my rule of thumb is that I would only consider taking someone on if, you know, if I look at the balance in the bank, look at all the expenses, and including their salary, I'm covered for 6 months. So if we made 0 sales, we still have the 6-month runway. Hopefully we will make some sales. But if I see that in my bank account, that sort of stability, then I'm confident taking this person on. And then you'll see, okay, you know, I can actually afford taking someone on full time. Bigger risk, but maybe also bigger reward. So that's how I make my decision whether I'm ready to do that sort of thing or commit to someone full time. One thing that's I do want to say, my angle for this entire conversation has been for people like myself, where I was bootstrapped in my previous business, I'm bootstrapped in this one. So I'm definitely more careful. I completely respect that there are people who want to move faster, and they're more tolerant to making mistakes, which I think is maybe a part of my personality that I'm not. And it's slightly different. You move faster, you make more mistakes, but at the end you probably end up going faster as a company. So that's fine too, but it's just kind of one perspective that I have from this maybe more bootstrap mindset.
Fantastic. I had one final question. Sonny, did you have any more questions that you wanted to?
No,
that's
I'm
it.
good, thanks.
So final question is what can a business do in terms of onboarding a new employee? So just going one step after this, what have you seen that helps new employees hit the ground running and have an impact straight away, versus the companies where they make the hire and it doesn't work out and they come back to you a few months later saying, yeah, we need someone new? Like,
so start with the basics. Imagine yourself being a new employee. What are the things you'd like to have? You want to know what to do on the first day. You want to have access to all the tools, all the information. You want people to be generally available. You want people to kind of talk to you and set some sort of appointment schedule in place. Generally, it's nice if you can be introduced to your team. And then you're probably ahead of a lot of companies that just don't do it. And in my mind, they set themselves up for failure. So it's a simple Trello list or a Asana list that repeats every time. These are the things that you need to be doing, whether it's professional, admin, social, all those things. So make a list. I'm sure there are great resources online that give you kind of a full list of that. And then an extra thing that's worked well for me is if you can meet the new hire in person, that's really helpful. There's still, I'm remote first, and that's how I prefer to work. But if you can get them to travel, if it's not too much of an ask on both sides, that is helpful. There's still some sort of magic happening in person. So if you can, for sure, do it. The other thing is, and that's a lot smaller, but if you can give them some sort of a gift, that's just, in my experience, goes a long way. So in my previous company, back then they were less common, but we gave everyone noise canceling headphones because they'd be more productive, and it's something they'd appreciate and maybe at the time wouldn't have. So something like that just also kind of shows that you're willing to invest in this relationship and do something nice for them that maybe is not strictly required.
Fantastic. Ugis, that was awesome, man. That was a really good presentation. Really good Q&A session.